You're listening to the Life After Gambling podcast, the show where we share real-life experiences, stories and insights of addiction and recovery. Join us as we speak to those who have walked this path before, delving deep into the many different experiences of recovery.
Welcome to the Life After Gambling podcast. My name is Steve, and on today's show, we're joined by our women's lead, Claire. Claire, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Claire, it's great to have you on. I know you are relatively new into post, and we're going to talk a little bit about that later. But firstly, would you like to give us a bit of an introduction to yourself? Tell us a little bit more about you.
Yep, sure. So I'm Claire. I started working for Reframe back in April. Now I've actually been a coach for a few years now, working with businesses or working with individuals. I did a master's in coaching in 2018. And then I came across Reframe as an advert. Would you like to become a coach? And addiction as an affected other has impacted my life since childhood. And I kind of felt it was something that I felt really passionate about. So I applied. I started coaching in April. And I think it's that kind of helping. I love the idea of coaching because it's not about talking necessarily about a problem that you kind of have. It's about working out solutions and moving forward. And I think it really, really fits in well with kind of that people in recovery, because sometimes you don't want to keep talking about the issue. It's about, right now I'm ready to move forward. So that was what really, really drew me to kind of Reframe Coaching. And then the opportunity for women's lead came up. And originally I kind of thought, oh, well, why is this needed? But once I started to look into kind of women and gambling, it became quite apparent that actually we don't talk enough about it. So I applied for the role and started in July. It's been really, really interesting few months, and I've learned a lot. I've met some really, really great people, and I'll talk about that more later.
No, brilliant. Well, thanks so much for that intro. What I found, with your background, Claire, I know you said you were previously coaching before you got involved with ourselves. How did you find that difference of working maybe with businesses to all of a sudden working with individuals in recovery? Is there a difference? And and if so, what was coming up for you? What did you notice?
I think sometimes the subject matter is slightly different, especially when you're working in business. It's about productivity and kind of hitting deadlines and stuff like that. But actually, those softer areas of life, those kind of building relationships and connections and kind of setting goals and kind of dealing with limiting beliefs and values and all of this stuff, that's everyone. And like, to be fair, the Life After Gambling program, if everyone could do it, it would be amazing. Like, absolutely anyone could do it and get something out of it. It's not necessarily just for those in recovery that these subjects are important. But I think they're even more important when you're kind of going through recovery, because sometimes you have lost sight of those things along the way. So I think it re-emphasizes what's important, such as and where our beliefs have come from and all of that kind of stuff. So the program, I think anyone could do it and get something out of it, but I think it's very, very important for recovery.
Oh, that's really, really interesting. And for those who are listening or watching, and if you're not quite sure what the Life After Gambling program consists of, we have 6 core modules essentially that help you bring greater awareness to the present, Claire, do you want to tell us what the 6 modules are?
Oh, now you're asking. So we have self-care, um, and that also includes boundaries. We have mindset, so that kind of growth fixed mindset. We look at beliefs. We also look at fear and goal setting, which is really, really important. And that's really key for kind of that kind of moving forward. Now you're going to put me on the spot. What other ones have we got? We also have...
So we have values is
the
another
value.
one.
Oh my God, values.
Do.
I've literally just started.
You've just sent me some information on that one.
Yeah, exactly. And emotions, which are really, really, I think with emotions, and it's not necessarily about controlling your emotions, but kind of understanding them and where they're coming from, and allowing them as well. Sometimes we're in fear of allowing our emotions, and I think it's a really key one. And I think, yeah, people really struggle with their emotions, and it's sometimes just letting them be and understanding where they came from and kind of not being fearful of them.
And we've got these on our online recovery portal, so everyone is able to go in and engage with the content. There's some self-study stuff, so we have videos to watch, resources to download, but also for individuals who want to work with a recovery coach, you can work with your coach alongside those modules that Claire and I have just mentioned, with the idea that it helps you bring greater awareness to those topics for you. You can explore what they mean for you in the present. And then, as Claire mentioned a bit earlier with coaching, it's then about helping you to then, right, well, what does that look like at the moment for me? How can I then embed different practices, use different tools and resources to get to where I want to get to? And that could be in regards to self-care. It could be in regards to your mindset, more developing more that growth mindset. So that's a little bit of what our Life After Gambling program sort of entails, in case you heard that and weren't really sure of what it entails. But thank you for sharing that, Claire. It allows us to sort of talk a little bit more about the work that we do as well, which I know wasn't planned as part of this podcast.
I can't believe I forgot values. I was literally working on that today.
put you under a bit of pressure in the spot, so apologies for that. So that's great, and obviously you've now started to deliver that for Reframe Coaching and have been doing since the start of the year. I know you then mentioned obviously you came on board as our women's lead, and we're really grateful to have you. How has that been, those first, I know you said July, so those first sort of 3 months, how have you found it?
It's been a little bit of an eye-opener, really. I mean, obviously, even looking at some of the stats with kind of women and gambling, and it's interesting because just as many women gamble as men, even though it is really seen as, and I'm going to be very stereotypical here, it's seen as middle class white man kind of gambling, and it's like betting at shops or casinos or going to horse racing, and actually gambling impacts so many people, so many different ages, cultures. It's such a diverse problem. And then on top of that, women are kind of completely forgotten about. And it is a problem for women. And it's shown in the fact that less women come forward with a problem than men do. So not only are women impacted just as much, but those that are impacted are coming forward less. And I think it's like less, it's kind of around only 6% of women that are struggling with gambling actually come forward and ask for help or some kind of access to help or just looking for resources. And I think on top of that, it's also understanding what gambling harm actually is. And a lot of people just think it's that I've lost money, I'm in debt, and all of this, where actually it's more than that. It could be just taking time away from your family and friends, like making you're sitting at home every night, like online gambling, you're isolating yourself. It can be that it's impacting your mental health. Maybe it's something that you wake up in the morning and that's what you think about and until you go to sleep. And that's it's not just about the finances, it's also about how it's impacting your day-to-day life and maybe taking you away from the things that you used to enjoy or the people that you love. And so it's so much more complex than what you when someone says, oh well, gambling, and you automatically think, well, it's all the people that are in debt and like they're going to get in debt and that's when they then get help. But it's more than that, and it's really important to kind of understand that gambling harm.
Thanks, Claire. So there's so much there that I'd love
Sorry.
to kind of, pick up and unravel. I think one of the things that you mentioned at the very start was around how gambling can still be seen by some people as this very male orientated activity and behavior. And I think for me, as just for me, like I think that just shows how there's been that evolution, particularly over the last decade, in a quick evolution of how gambling has changed. Whereas, you're going back a few decades where you would have had to go into the bookmakers to put a bet on, a physical bet, and how at the time, if you looked at the demographic of people doing that, it probably would have been very much male orientated. But you look at the last sort of decade and even like how technology has changed, how the way individuals can gamble has changed dramatically, from the things that you can gamble on, the types of gambling that's available. Should we not be surprised the demographic of people that has changed with it? Like you've said, it's now much more accessible, but also for some people like much more appealing to gamble in certain activities. Yet we're kind of in some places still quite ignorant to the fact that it's only men do that. Like that may have been the case a few decades ago, but it's definitely not the case now, as you've mentioned. So I find that really, really interesting, and I think, like you've said, it's definitely a piece around awareness raising that is needed. Just to try and make people more aware of how things currently look, like the here and the now, the present, which is, I know, what we talk about with coaching, but just for that wider population, this is how gambling has changed.
Absolutely.
And like you said, the women that are gambling now, the harms associated for them, okay, there will be definitely some similarities, and I know you've mentioned some of them around financial, but there will also be some differences as well for women. So I know we're going to touch on it again in a minute about how we support people, particularly women. Do we need to make the support more accessible? Do we need to make it a little bit different? Do we need to make it more holistic? All of that, making it personalised to people is really important. And again, I just want to ask sort of the question around what sort of unique ways do you feel, and of what you've seen over the last couple of months, that gambling affects women differently to those that would men?
I think sometimes it can be more complex for women. I think there is this sometimes I don't think they're able to necessarily recognize in the first place that they're kind of harming themselves. And then on top of that, there's this kind of barrier to come forward. I mean, I've been talking to lots of different organizations that are trying to help women and try and raise awareness of this. And one of the big things is that they're like, where are these women? We know that there are women kind of struggling with this, but we just can't, like, we don't seem to be able to find them. And I think one of the realizations I had was like, I'm in my 40s, but not once have I ever heard one of my friends or like my female friends talk about a struggle with gambling. Now, the likelihood is that one of them has been. And we talk about everything else. We talk about kind of how much drinking or diet or kind of kids or even mental health issues we talk about, but it's not something that is discussed. And I think it is starting from that kind of those conversations, and then knowing where to go, and talking to even professionals, in talking to other professionals, is that okay, yeah, they know that it's a problem, but they didn't know all the resources that were available for women, or that, oh yeah, no, it's not a question that we ask when we kind of speak to women. And I think that's where it's got to change. We've got to make it so that it's not a taboo subject, or it's a subject that we start, and I think that starts with every woman, and just kind of not, I mean, I suppose it's difficult, but just, I mean, one of my friends kind of mentioned, oh yeah, I had a bit of an issue during lockdown with a certain app, but that's because she now knows what I do, and so she felt comfortable in coming out with it. So I think the more that we talk about it, then the more that stigma kind of goes away, because we're all prone to it. And especially now with the algorithms on our phones and stuff, like you click on one of these, you're then going to get 200 invites for lots of different stuff. And watching daytime TV, you see all the adverts that are targeting women to come and play this or come and play that. And I think we need to start then talking, oh, did you see that, or have you ever done that, and just making it a safe space.
And I know you mentioned there around sort of the shame and stigma, and it's one thing that we regularly hear and regularly get reported on in general. And I know across the board, the number of individuals that will actually go and reach out for support in relation to their gambling is a really low percentage. And you've mentioned for women, it's probably, you know, even lower. How do we? I know you mentioned about talking about it a lot more, but you know, how does that shame, stigma, an element even maybe of guilt, remorse, you know, impact that gambling for women, and what challenges do they also face in terms of maybe reaching out for help?
Oh, well, I mean, I think most of the women that I've worked with, and especially through Reframe, they all thought they were the only ones. Like they were the only one that had this problem. But I don't necessarily think that that is the same for men, because like we've said, it's seen as a man's addiction. So, but most of the women that I spoke to, it's that I'm the only one that's done this. How have I got myself into, like, it's that complete guilt of complete blame on themselves, and that they're the only ones that this has happened to. And I think that then stops them, because they think there isn't any help for them, because they're they're the only one, so who can help me if I'm. So I think it's about other people, that other women that have maybe gone through this, is speaking out and showing that it can happen to anyone. Addiction it isn't a specific person, it isn't a specific group of people, it isn't a specific area in the UK. That actually addiction and gambling addiction can impact anyone, anywhere, anyhow. And I think it's getting people to kind of speak out about their recovery as well, because then there is that, oh, okay, I recognize that person is like me and they've managed to recover. So if I go and get that help, then I can then recover. And I think it's those stories, and kind of building on that community, that women's community.
And I think that connection is really, really important for people in recovery, and not just in recovery, people seeking support. And it's one area that Reframe Coaching, in terms of our support and what we do, and I know we're going to come on to talk about a little bit about support later, but just wanted to mention, like, the recovery coaching support that we do, all of our coaches who deliver on a one-to-one basis, you know, have their own lived experience as being affected by gambling. and we often hear anecdotally of this, that actually how beneficial that is, and how much they've actually enjoyed speaking to someone who has had very similar thoughts, very similar feelings, and can really empathize with each other, and how they didn't know that that was available as well. So I think that's probably one of the challenges that we have, as well as other organizations in this space, kind of communicating that offer of what we do, how we do it, and how it helps. But I know we're going to come back onto support a little bit later, so we'll park that bit there. But also, Claire, like through the last sort of couple of months that you've been kind of doing all this work, you've been speaking to lots of people. What would you say, like, how does gambling harm extend beyond the person who's gambling? Like, have you speaking to women who have also been affected by their loved ones, and how has that been? What have you found out from that?
Yeah. And I mean, affected others. I mean, I think the statistic is like 7% of the population are impacted by somebody else's gambling, which is a huge number. And that can be your husband, your wife, your parents, your children, your brother, your sister, your cousin, and it does impact. And I think working with affected others, there is that feeling of helplessness, like, well, what can I do? It's their, like, they're the one that's going through it, it's their addiction. I can only support them, I can only hope that they get help. So there is that kind of real frustration because they don't know how to help, or like what they're, that also that they're part of that dynamic, in terms of that they can be supportive but set boundaries, that they can kind of rebuild the relationship whilst also making sure that they themselves are okay. And I think as an affected other, that the one thing that they usually neglect is their own self-care. They're so focused on trying to support that other person, or to hold the family together. So if it's husband or wife, then that person is also trying to protect the children or protect the other family members. And a lot of the time, as the affected other, they don't feel that they can be honest with other people because it isn't it isn't always their kind of truth to tell, that unless the person that's going through the addiction is willing to go and tell other people, then I don't feel like I can. And it is about making sure that that person that's supporting everyone also make sure that they look after themselves, that they are true to their values, that they have the support that they need, that they can't just support everyone without getting their own support. And I think that's why it's really, really, we've got to remember that as an affected other, you are also going through recovery. It's not just that person that's going through recovery, but you also are going through recovery, and you're going to have to rebuild certain parts of your life. You're going to have to get to know yourself as now, not before all of this happened.
And I think that, that's a really good point, isn't it? I think we often, as human beings, have this tendency to see a problem and try and fix it. And I think when we're talking about people who've been affected by, someone else's gambling, it's really difficult. Like, you can't fix it. It's not for you to fix, but it's really important that you continue to support, you continue, more importantly, to look after yourself as well. So providing affected others with that opportunity to do so, you've got that powerful quote, haven't you? You can't pour from an empty cup. And making sure that your cup is full, so you are, when needed, you're able to support other people because your cup is full. You're able to then give to other people. But I think it is really important, as you've mentioned, to be able to focus on yourself, to focus on your own needs, your own boundaries as well, because it's really important to keep yourself safe, as well as the person who is gambling. So there are so many different facets to that. But you're right, it is an area that there needs to be sort of additional support as well for affected others, to make sure that they, again, are looking after themselves and the recovery that they're in themselves, because it is a personalized thing, so it will look different to other people. We do obviously see a lot of similarities, but making sure that you've got that time to focus on you, I think is really, really important. So thanks for obviously sharing. So you've been speaking to, sounds like lots of people, firstly. so speaking to women, speaking to individuals who are like affected others, speaking to professionals as well. I know you've mentioned, like, how has that conversation with professionals gone? I know you've mentioned that common theme of the statistics obviously show one thing, but actually reaching out has been a difficult part. But how has that conversation with sort of professionals been going as well?
Do you know what the biggest thing I found is, like, how much support there is out there for people if they want it, and it's here and it's ready and it's waiting, and how compassionate and how amazing some of these organizations are, and that they're safe spaces for people, and that everyone just wants to help help people in recovery. They want to, and so it's really, in that way, it's a really lovely space. But the frustrating bit then is, okay, we've got all these amazing people that are ready to support, and but where are they? Like, how can we show that and there's so much different support, that even if one thing doesn't work for you, that there is another option. And I think that's sometimes really important, is that there isn't just group meetings, there is one-to-one support, there is women only support, there is support for affected others, there is support for families. So whatever support you're looking for, it's there. And actually, a lot of the time, there's multiple support. You don't just have to go down one route, but you can try everything and see what works for you. And so what has been amazing is to kind of speak to so many organizations, and see the good work that they're trying to do, and that there are so many just different options, and whatever is going to work for you, there is an option out there.
That's obviously really, really pleasing to hear, the fact that we've got these support services in place and how they're complementary as well. In terms of, I know a lot of your work is about making not just our support as accessible as possible, but support in general. What does sort of the next 3 to 6 months sort of look like for yourself? Like, how do you kind of bring that to life?
Yeah, so the next 3 months, it's really concentrating on building those relationships with not just organizations that are within the gambling treatment, but further afield. So those other organizations that are supporting women, those other organizations that are providing different kind of support, and telling them that obviously if somebody does have gambling harm, whether that's themselves or as an affected other, that we can help, whether that is through our pre-service, where we're able to signpost them to that amazing support that is out there, however that looks like for them, or that aftercare program. So once they've kind of gone through the treatment, that we can then help them kind of move on. But it's kind of going out further afield. And one of the things that I'm doing is I'm working with another great charity, Thriving Together, which is all about bringing women together as a community, and they offer some great services, is building a professionals network. And that's not just organizations that are kind of, like I said, doing gambling treatment or supporting that, but across the whole network. So whether you're a doctor or you're kind of running in a women's center, or you run a mum and baby group, like these women can, like, we can be absolutely anywhere. So anyone that supports women, and it's not just the professionals network. You don't just have to be a woman. You may be a guy that is supporting women, like I said. But it's about bringing those professionals together, learning from each other, understanding where the barriers are, understanding what some of the women are facing, what issues are they facing, and how can we navigate those issues to try and bring the support to them as easily as possible. Plus also learning more. And I think the more we learn and the more we talk to each other, then again, that can feed back into the services that we provide, or we can make sure that there is a service there available for whatever type that there is needed.
Oh, that sounds excellent. And if we've got people listening or watching who kind of fit into that criteria and are interested, how can they kind of contact you, Claire, or what's the process?
Yeah, just get in contact with me, and we'll set up a quick chat, and then obviously we'll get you invited to the professionals network. But I think it's something that'd be it's really important to kind of learn from each other about what's going on.
Oh, that sounds brilliant. And one thing that you then mentioned was around speaking to different support services, particularly sort of women only. Is there? I know you said there's you were quite surprised by the amount of support that's out there. Like, is there any services that you can mention now? Like, do you want to share some of that stuff?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, there's Complete Women, which is based in Leeds, which kind of offers support to women that are actually quite new to the country, not just, but are coming into the country, and it's about helping them to integrate. And they offer services that kind of help with mental health or integration. They run amazing workshops. So that's an organization that is really trying to kind of influence their community, and help women in their community. I mean, on the gambling side, we've got Simon Scotland that also have a women's hub. Again, it's just a safe space. So it's not necessarily just about going there for help, but you can just go, and it's a community, and it's a place to kind of feel safe and talk to other women in your community, which I think these are really, really key, to kind of giving that message across and making women feel safe.
Oh, that's good. Have you noticed any sort of, I know we provide recovery coaching with a lived experience recovery coach. Have you noticed any other sort of women only support within the gambling space itself?
Yeah, there's so many. I mean, you've got, like I mentioned before, Thriving Together, which is all about building a community for women. And that is whether you're an affected other, you've gone through your own gambling harm, or you're someone that wants to support women. So it really is a great charity and network of bringing women together to try and kind of overcome sort of the gambling harm and learn from each other. You've also got GAM Care that run an Affected Others group for women. That is a 6-week course, and it's bringing people together, and it provides that support, that safe space to be able to kind of talk about those issues, like I said, to be able to concentrate on you rather than what's going on. You've also GAM Care also run a training for organizations that help those organizations talk about the issue of women and gambling. So what it could look like, what can you say, what questions can you ask? So, which I think is really important. You've got Gordon Moody that run their own women's only residential. They you've also got you've got Epic that also run women's, I think they run a weekly, or it might be bi-weekly group for women. We've even got Gamblers Anonymous that do a preferred women's group, if that is, and I believe that most of them are online. I think there's a couple that are dotted around the country that you can kind of drop into. You've got Betknowmore that run, I believe theirs is a 10-week program, people dealing with gambling harm, and it's new beginnings. So again, it's about building a group and getting that support and kind of realizing that you're not the only one.
And being around, like you mentioned earlier, around that feeling of isolation, like you're the only one going through it, having that connection within the group, I can imagine being really, really beneficial for people. It sounds like there's like you've said, there is actually a lot of support available. And I think one of the jobs that we have as an organisation as well is kind of bringing that together. So it's really collaborative in terms of support options. So we're really able to complement and provide someone with a really nice tool and suite of recovery resources, because, like you said, there is an awful lot out there. So yeah, which is really pleasing. I think with the network, just going back to that, I think what we will do, and we will actually do with all the support services as well, Claire, is on the show notes for the episode, we will tag and link into all of the various organizations that you've made. So if individuals are listening and watching this and they're really interested to finding out a bit more about any of the bits that you've said, we'll make sure that there are links into the notes so individuals can go on and access that. But we'll also put in the notes, if it's all right with you, your contact details.
Yeah.
So if anything of what Claire has shared during today's episode either resonates with you, you'd like some more information, I know you'd be really keen to keep speaking to more people who want to support with the things that not just us, but other organisations in this space want to do as well. And it just lastly, Claire, like, is there anything that you want to mention that we haven't spoke about so far? I know we've covered an awful lot, but is there anything that you feel as though you'd want to mention?
No, I think we've mentioned quite a bit. I just think it's important to talk about. Let's just start talking about it. Let's not see this as a taboo subject. And I think the more we can talk about it, then the more help people will come forward and get. And it's like anything. Mental health, go back 10 years, mental health was a big taboo subject, and then we've started to talk about it. And more people are kind of asking for help for that. So this is what we've got to do for gambling, and let's talk about it. Let's be honest about our own experiences of it, and let's make it a non-taboo subject, so that when people are struggling, we've got some amazing support out there, so that those services can be used and people can kind of live the life that they want to. Amazing.
Well, thanks for coming on the podcast and sharing kind of what you've been up to in the last 3 months. And I know from Reframe Coaching's side, that's an awful lot in such a short space of time. So thank you for your dedication and the work that you've been doing. And I think what has been really nice and has always shone through from myself is how much we want to work with you want to work with other organisations to shine a light on the work that is available and the options that are available as a whole, rather than just the options that we provide as a charity. So that has really been noted, and is something that we wanted to hopefully share within this podcast as well. So I think lastly from me is to thank you for coming on. And also for those who are listening, if you'd like to reach out to Reframe Coaching in terms of general support, please do. We'll put our contact details in the show notes below. But if it's in particular in relation to women only support, I'll add Claire's contact details in the show notes as well. But thank you so much for listening. And Claire, thanks once again for coming on.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Life After Gambling podcast. Keep up to date with all the latest by connecting with us at reframecoaching.org.uk. Join us again next time as we bring you more real life experiences of recovery.